Blood on the Persian rug wasn't human. It came from my mare's split hoof after she kicked Laura's suitcase across my living room. Investors flinched. Cameras kept rolling. And my son smiled like a realtor at a crime scene. The house smelled of chlorine. Manure. Cameras kept rolling. My name is Evelyn Hartman. I am 66 years old. And expensive perfume over fear. And today, my son Noah arrived with his wife and investors to live stream my ranch and take it under a capacity clause. Before I continue, tell me where you're watching from. And hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by family. Because sometimes betrayal doesn't come from strangers, it comes wrapped in your own bloodline. Smiling for the camera. Calling it love while measuring what they'll take next. I wasn't always the woman who could smile while burning down her own past. Once, I was just a wife who believed in promises and a mother who believed too easily in her son. The first time Daniel brought me to Silver Creek, the grass was taller than my knees and the wind smelled like clean rain and rust. He stood beside me, hands on his hips, saying, "It's not much now, Evie, but give me time. I'll make this place sing." I believed him. I always did. We spent our first year rebuilding that old ranch with our own hands. Daniel was a mechanic by trade. So he treated engines and fences the same way with stubborn tenderness. He'd hammer nails while whistling Sinatra. And I'd paint the kitchen cabinets while our baby, Noah, slept in a basket by the window. The sound of his soft breathing became the rhythm of our days. Back then, money was thin, but laughter was loud. We'd eat beans and cornbread by candlelight because the power lines hadn't reached this far yet. Every night, Daniel would say, "Someday, this land will belong to Noah." And I'd smile, pretending not to feel the pinch in my chest, that small. Irrational fear that maybe Noah would never love it the way his father did. When Noah turned 10, he stopped asking to ride the horses. He wanted to visit his city friends instead. "The ranch is boring," he'd say, tugging at his dusty sneakers. Daniel laughed it off. But I saw the flicker in his eyes, the disappointment he never voiced. One summer evening, I found Daniel sitting on the porch, hands black with grease, looking out at the hills. He didn't turn when I stepped beside him. "He's not like us," he murmured. I remember how the sunset painted his face in orange and gold. "He's young," I said. "He'll come around." But Daniel shook his head. "No, Evie. He's already chasing something we can't give him." I didn't understand it then. But that moment was the first crack in our little world quiet. Invisible, but deep. Years passed. Daniel's hair turned gray. Mine silvered beside it. Noah went to college, then to Portland, chasing skyscrapers and clients. He'd visit on holidays with expensive shoes and restless eyes. "You two should sell this place," he'd say, half joking. "You two should sell this place." Daniel would just smile. "Land like this could make you millionaires." Slow and steady. "Son." That was the beginning of their silent war, profit versus principle. When Daniel was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, Noah barely had time to visit. I told myself he was busy. But deep down, I knew he was avoiding the truth. I became nurse, accountant, and farmer all in one. I learned how to clean feeding tubes, fix broken fences, and lie to my husband about how bad it really was. On nights when Daniel couldn't sleep, he'd make me promise to keep the ranch alive. "Noah will understand someday," he whispered. "He has to." I kissed his hand, tasting salt and medicine. "I'll make sure of it." He died on a Tuesday morning in September. The sky was painfully blue. I buried him under the cottonwood tree near the creek, his favorite spot. Noah arrived 2 days late, wearing a tailored suit and mirrored sunglasses. He hugged me like a stranger. "Mom, you should move to the city," he said. "You can't handle this place alone." I smiled, because I'd learned by then that silence cuts deeper than any argument. "You can't handle this place alone." I found a letter in Daniel's old workshop. It wasn't addressed to me. It was for Noah. The first line read, "Son, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And I need you to understand one thing. Work gives land its worth." He never sent it. Maybe he knew Noah wasn't ready. Maybe he hoped I'd know when to use it. I kept that letter hidden in the desk drawer, under tax returns and utility bills, waiting for the day it might matter. For a while, the silence became my only companion. I'd wake up to the sound of wind against the barn and pretend it was Daniel's voice calling from the fields. The neighbors, Hendersons and Petersons, would stop by with casseroles and pity. They'd talk about weather, cattle, and prayer, then glance at the empty rocking chair beside me. When winter came, I sold half the herd. I fixed the roof myself. My hands cracked from cold. But I refused to ask for help. Every chore became an act of defiance, proof that I could still carry his dream. By spring, every chore became an act of defiance, proof that I could still carry his dream. Ruth showed up in her beat-up truck. Hoop earrings, red lipstick, and a grin that could light a power outage. "Evie, you look like hell," she said, tossing her purse on the porch swing. Perfect time to get even with life. I laughed for the first time in months. That was Ruth, a hurricane wrapped in friendship. She moved into the guest room just for a week and ended up staying for 3 months. Every morning, she'd brew coffee strong enough to wake the dead. And we'd sit watching the sun crawl over the ridge. "Promise me you'll keep this place," she'd say. "I promise, Daniel." I'd answer, "Then promise yourself, too." I didn't know it back then. But those words would come back to haunt me later, when promises became weapons. By the second year, I'd found my rhythm again, fences mended, bills paid, loneliness managed. I thought the worst was behind me, until that one morning when the phone rang and Noah's voice came through, smooth as glass. "Hey, Mom, got a surprise for you. We're coming to visit next week." He paused. "And I have Danae. We'll bring a few people from the firm. And investors." Something in his tone made my stomach twist. But I smiled anyway, because mothers always do. "That sounds wonderful, honey," I said, staring at Daniel's empty chair by the window. I didn't know it yet, but that call was the sound of war drums under the calm. The days before Noah arrived felt like the air itself was holding its breath. The ranch was quiet. Almost too quiet, the kind of stillness that comes right before a storm. Ruth noticed it first. "You keep polishing things that don't need polishing," she said, sipping coffee on the porch. "I like order," I replied. She raised an eyebrow. "No, you like control. Two different things." I didn't argue, but she was right. I wasn't preparing for a visit. I was preparing for a siege. That night, I opened Daniel's old drawer again, the one with the unfinished letter and a small brass key I'd never used. The key fit the lock to his workshop, a room I hadn't entered since the funeral. The hinges cried when I pushed the door open. Inside, everything smelled of oil, cedar, and ghosts. His tools were lined up with surgical precision. On the workbench sat an old tape recorder. Ander to later. I hesitated before pressing play. His voice filled the room warm, steady, unshakable. "If you're hearing this, Evelyn, I probably didn't get to finish what I started. Don't let him sell it. He doesn't understand yet, but he will. One day, When the noise of the city fades and the silence of the earth calls him, he'll need this place more than he knows. I pressed stop, my hands trembling. One day felt like a cruel joke. That day was coming faster than either of us had planned. When Ruth found me still standing there an hour later, she didn't ask questions. She just handed me a glass of bourbon and said, "You're thinking war. I can see it in your face." "I'm thinking justice," I said. She grinned. Same difference. The week passed in slow motion. Every sunset felt like a countdown. Jack and Mateo helped me fix the generator, the fences, the lights, but not for the reasons they thought. Each repair was part of a system Daniel had designed years ago, remote controls for the ranch's power, water, even the stable doors. He'd called it the fail-safe. Back then, I thought it was unnecessary. Now, I called it insurance. I tested the controls from my laptop. 1 click for water, 1 for lights, 1 to lock every gate. Power in silence. That was Daniel's gift. When Noah's black SUV finally appeared on the dirt road, kicking up dust and vanity, I stood on the porch with a calm I didn't feel. Laura was the first to step out, high heels sinking into the mud. Hair perfect. Smile wide enough for a commercial. Behind her came 2 men in designer jackets and 1 woman with a drone. "Mom." Noah's voice boomed like he owned the land. He hugged me quickly, like he was afraid authenticity might stain his shirt. "Doesn't this place look amazing?" he said, waving toward the open fields. "We're calling the series Modern Ranch Living. Laura's idea." Laura clasped my hands. "It's about showing people how simplicity can be luxury. You'll love it." I smiled. "I'm sure I will." What I meant was, you'll choke on it. Ruth stayed inside that day, watching from behind the curtains. Later, she whispered, "They're not guests, Evie. They're scavengers." "I know," I said. "That's why I'm feeding them." The first evening, they insisted on filming dinner. Laura wanted rustic charm, so she made Jack wear a cowboy hat and pretend to grill. Noah opened expensive wine and talked about merging nostalgia with profitability. I stirred the beans and said nothing. Halfway through the meal, one of the investors asked about property rights. "So, Mrs. Hartman, are you on the deed, or is it jointly held?" Noah jumped in before I could answer. "We're in the process of restructuring," he said smoothly. "Just paperwork." I caught his eye. Restructuring. Interesting word. He looked away first. That night, I sat by the window while they drank and laughed around the fire pit. Their voices carried through the open glass city, words echoing off old wood. Laura giggled. "Your mom's cute." "Noah. She's got that quiet mystique. Very marketable." He replied, "Yeah. She's something. Something. Not someone." I should have cried. But instead, I smiled. Quiet mystic had its uses. The next morning, I started testing boundaries. I accidentally turned off the Wi-Fi while they were live. The feed froze mid-sentence, leaving Laura's face twisted in irritation. "Sorry," I said sweetly. Old wiring. By noon, the horses had escaped the corral. By evening, the pipes burst near the pool, flooding their rented outdoor lounge set. Each mishap earned me another tight smile from Noah and another fake laugh from Laura. Ruth nearly choked laughing behind the barn. "You're a menace." "I'm a teacher," I said. Lesson 1. Control isn't about shouting. By day 3, tensions were snapping. The investors wanted to leave. Laura begged Noah to fix the optics. That's when he made his mistake. He ordered me to stay out of sight during filming. "Mom, you make the set look Too real, he said, avoiding my eyes. Too real, I repeated. You mean alive? Just, please. Go rest. So I did. I went to my room, peered coffee, and watched their live feed from my laptop. On screen, they performed happiness. Laura narrated a segment about embracing imperfection, standing next to the horse stall I'd sabotaged hours earlier. Right on cue, the stall door creaked open, and my mare, Bluebell, trotted into frame tail high, knocking over lights. Screams filled the speakers. One of the investors dove into the mud. I nearly spilled my coffee laughing, but then, amid the chaos, I saw something that stopped me cold. Lily, my granddaughter, standing near the fence, clutching her tablet, watching it all unfold. Her eyes weren't scared. They were awake. She turned toward the camera and met my gaze through the lens, like she knew. And in that silent second, I realized she understood everything: the farce, the lies, the quiet fury simmering beneath my calm. When the chaos died down, I found her sitting on the porch swing. "Grandma," she whispered, "why are you letting them be mean?" I knelt beside her, because sometimes the best way to show truth is to let it speak for itself. She frowned, thinking hard. "Is that like when you make Dad eat his own cooking?" I laughed softly. "Exactly like that." That night, she slipped a folded paper under my door. It was Daniel's letter, the one I'd hidden years ago. The ink was smudged where small hands had held it too tightly, under the signature. Lily had written one line in crayon: "He'd be proud of you." I cried for the first time in years, not because I was sad, but because I finally saw the ending Daniel had meant all along. The land wasn't just a fight to win. It was a mirror showing us who we'd become. I folded the letter, placed it in my pocket, and looked out the window. Noah's fancy string lights flickered in the wind. I folded the letter and looked out the window. Let's see how authentic you really are. The storm outside began to build, low thunder rolling over the hills. Inside, I made my decision. Tomorrow, I'd leave them the stage and start my revenge from the shadows. I didn't know it back then, but the show was about to become very, very real. I didn't know it back then, but the show was about to become I didn't know it back then. "Ranch mornings are magical," she said into her phone, voice syrupy and false. Behind her, Noah barked orders at Jack and Mateo, who were pretending to follow directions while actually sabotaging every camera angle. I watched from my kitchen window, a cup of black coffee warming my hands. It wasn't just caffeine I needed, it was patience. Revenge is like bread. If you rush it, it collapses. When I stepped outside, Laura turned, her smile mechanical. "Morning. Evelyn, can you stand over there? The shot needs balance." The next morning smelled of wet hay and arrogance. "Balance," I repeated. "Funny word for thieves." She blinked, confused. "Sorry. Nothing, dear. Keep pretending." She didn't get it. Of course, pretending was her full-time job. By noon, the temperature climbed high enough to make the air shimmer. Noah wanted a riding scene for his investors. He'd never handled a horse in his life. I almost warned him, but then again, some lessons must be learned the hard way. Jack brought out Bluebell, my mare, still restless from yesterday's chaos. "She's a bit temperamental," Jack said, eyes glinting. "She'll be fine." Noah scoffed, mounting awkwardly. How hard can it be? 10 seconds later, Bluebell reared, sending Noah flying into a puddle of manure. The drone captured everything: the flailing limbs, the muffled curses, the mud-smeared designer shirt. Laura screamed, "Cut the feed." But the cameraman was too busy laughing. Ruth leaned against the fence beside me. $10 says he blames you. I smirked. He can add it to my tab. Later, while Noah showered and sulked, I paid a quiet visit to the barn. I needed to check the power system, Daniel's old control panel. Each switch had a handwritten label. Main. Water. Lights. Lockdown. I traced my fingers over them, feeling the metals chill. Still protecting us. "Aren't you?" I whispered. Behind me, Lily appeared, barefoot and curious. "Grandma." "What's that?" "Just an old secret," I said. "Want to help me keep it?" She nodded solemnly. Kids understand loyalty better than adults ever do. That evening, Noah gathered everyone in the living room for a meeting. The air smelled of sweat, lavender candle smoke, and tension. He stood near the fireplace, clean and furious. "This isn't working. The investors are spooked. Laura's trending for all the wrong reasons. We need to control the narrative." Laura crossed her arms. "Maybe if your mother didn't keep sabotaging us." I raised an eyebrow. Sabotaging. "I didn't ask your cameraman to step in cow dung." "Dear." "Mom." Noah snapped. "This is serious." "I know. That's what makes it funny." The room went silent. I could feel the old dynamic shift, the same pattern from when he was a teenager, yelling while I waited him out. Back then, I could feel the old dynamic shift, the same pattern from when he was a teenager. Daniel would step in. But Daniel wasn't here now. Calm things down. This was between me and the boy who'd forgotten how to be a man. "You came here to sell what your father built. Do you really think a live stream can teach you authenticity?" He flinched, then smirked. "You wouldn't understand. It's marketing. Then market this," I said, and walked out. Outside, the wind carried the scent of rain. I stood by the creek where Daniel's ashes were scattered, watching lightning flicker across distant hills. For a moment, I wondered if I'd gone too far. But then I remembered the way Noah talked about restructuring. The word tasted like betrayal. Back inside, Ruth was waiting with 2 glasses of wine. "He's coming apart," she said. "What's next?" "Next." I sipped, savoring the bitterness. We let the storm help. That night, thunder cracked open the sky. Power flickered. Laura screamed from the guest room about ruined equipment. I hid a smile and pressed a single button on my laptop. The ranch went dark. Every light. Every screen. Total blackout. In the pitch-black silence, I heard Daniel's words echo in my head. "Work gives land its worth." And I thought, let them work for once. By dawn, the crew was miserable. No internet. No hot water. No air conditioning. Noah stomped through the mud, barking at Jack. "Fix this, or I'll sue you." Jack wiped his hands on his jeans. "Sue who?" "The sky." When the sun finally rose, I stepped out, calm as a preacher on Sunday. "Everything okay?" "Kids." Laura glared. "You're enjoying this." Laura glared. "Aren't you?" "Maybe I just like seeing people sweat for content." "Aren't you?" The barn door slammed in the wind, the kind of sound that makes animals restless. Chickens scattered. Horses whinnied. And one of the investors screamed as a rooster chased him around the pen. Ruth appeared beside me, holding coffee. "This place has never been livelier." I nodded. "Let's make sure they get it all on camera." I didn't know it then. But the footage from that day would be the first nail in Noah's coffin, not literal, but reputational. And reputations, once cracked, never truly mend. That night, when everyone finally collapsed from exhaustion, I sat on the porch swing alone. The moon was pale and full, hanging above Silver Creek like an unblinking eye. I whispered into the still air, "Tomorrow, they'll see what truth really costs." And somewhere in the distance, thunder answered. By morning, Silver Creek looked like a battlefield between vanity and reality. Mud tracks cut through the lawn where the investors' luxury SUVs had been stuck overnight. The air still smelled of wet hay and burnt electronics. I sat on the porch steps, sipping coffee as the crew stumbled out, eyes hollow from another sleepless night. Noah's voice broke the silence first. "We're back online today. No more accidents. No more screw-ups." He didn't look at me when he said it, which told me everything. Guilt always hides behind control. Laura emerged next, wearing her influencer armor, perfect hair, fresh gloss, and a tight smile stretched over panic. "Morning, Evelyn," she said. "We're doing a redemption stream today. Positivity, forgiveness, rebuilding the vibe." I smiled sweetly. "Redemption works best when you've earned it." She blinked, unsure if it was a compliment or a threat. Ruth leaned in from the kitchen door and whispered, "You want me to loosen the water valve again?" "Not yet," I said quietly. "Let's see what honesty looks like first." Noah's redemption stream began at noon. The whole team gathered outside the barn. Laura adjusted her phone on a tripod, talking to her followers. "Sometimes life gets messy," she said brightly, gesturing at the muddy ground. "But that's what makes it beautiful." Behind her, one of the horses snorted loud enough to shake the mic. The live comments exploded in laughter. Laura's smile twitched. Noah jumped in, his voice too cheerful. "What matters is family. My mother here has taught me that authenticity." He reached out, placing a hand on my shoulder like he was introducing a guest star. The camera zoomed in. I looked at him, at the lens, and then at the invisible audience watching through their screens. "Authenticity," I said. "That's a word people use when they've forgotten how to tell the truth." Authenticity. The cameraman didn't dare cut the feed. Noah laughed stiffly. "She's joking, folks. Mom's just—" "I'm not joking," I interrupted. "My son here forgot to mention that while filming his little family project, he's also filing to sell this ranch without my consent." The air snapped like dry wood. For a moment, no one moved. Then Laura lunged toward the camera, cut the feed, but it was too late. The live stream was already climbing the trending charts. The comments flooded in. "She's exposing them. Oh my God, this is real. That poor old woman." Noah grabbed my wrist, whispering harshly, "What the hell are you doing?" I met his eyes, whispering harshly. Ruth stepped onto the porch, slow clapping like it was theater. "Bravo," she muttered. The investors were already packing their bags. Laura burst into tears, yelling about reputations and sponsors. Noah chased her toward the driveway, trying to control what was never his to begin with. I walked back inside, a heart pounding but steady. The house hummed faintly, a sound only I understood. Daniel's system was alive, waiting. I opened the laptop and checked the live metrics. 200,000 views. 300. 500,000. "Let the truth breathe," I whispered, and hit record. Outside, thunder rumbled again, the storm that had been circling the hills all week finally rolling in. The wind caught the curtains, slamming the back door open. Jack appeared, drenched from the barn. "They're leaving," he said. "You sure you don't want to stop them?" I shook my head. "They came here looking for a show. I'm just giving them a finale. Through the rain-streaked window, I saw Noah standing alone in the yard, phone pressed to his ear, shouting into static. Laura had driven off with one of the investors. The drone hovered above him, still streaming, capturing every second of his unraveling. He looked up, straight into the lens, then back toward the house at me. His expression wasn't anger anymore. It was something worse. Realization. He mouthed the words, "You planned this." I didn't answer. I simply closed the curtain. That night, the storm broke in full. Rain hammered the tin roof. Lightning lit up the valley, and power flickered just long enough for me to walk into Daniel's workshop. The smell of oil and rain mixed in the air. I found the tape recorder again and pressed play. Daniel's voice filled the dark. If he ever forgets what matters, show him. Don't tell him, show him. Outside, I heard the crunch of footsteps Noah's, soaked and heavy. He pushed the door open, water dripping from his hair, eyes hollow. "Mom, what did you do?" I turned to face him, calm as the storm behind me. "Exactly what your father asked." Lightning split the sky, framing his silhouette in white fire. The sound of the rain swallowed our silence. And that's when I knew the next day would decide everything, not just the ranch, but what was left of us. He'd tried to bury me in paperwork. I was about to bury him in truth. I didn't know it back then. But that live stream wasn't the end of the chaos. It was only the spark. The real fire, the one that would burn down his pride and build something new, was still waiting for morning. The morning after the storm felt hollow, as if the air itself was exhausted from watching what had happened. Silver Creek was silent. No drones. No investors. No Laura with her pastel filters, just the smell of rain-soaked soil and shame. I woke to find the house empty. Except for Ruth and Lily. No Laura with her pastel filters, just the smell of rain-soaked soil and shame. Ruth was frying eggs in a pan that hissed like static. She said without turning. "Where?" "By the creek. Same spot where you scattered Daniel's ashes." I poured coffee, black and bitter, and said, "Then that's where the story ends." Outside, the grass was slick, the sky bruised gray. I walked slowly, boots sinking into mud. Noah stood near the water, staring at the broken drone floating in the current. His clothes were still wet, hair matted, pride drowned. He didn't turn when he heard me. "You humiliated me," he said quietly. "No," I answered. "You did that yourself. I just made sure someone was watching." He laughed, short and sharp, like glass breaking. "You think this proves something? You ruined me. The firm's dropping me. Laura's gone. They're calling me a fraud online. You built your house on lies. Noah, I just opened the windows." He turned, and for the first time in years, I saw the boy he used to be, scared, angry, lost. Why couldn't you just let it go? It's land. Lost. "Mom, you can't live off pride." "Maybe not," I said, stepping closer, stepping closer. "For a moment, the firm's dropping me. But you can die from the lack of it." The ranch behind us loomed like a witness. "But you can die from the lack of it. For a moment, your father wrote this. He wanted you to read it when you were ready." He hesitated, then unfolded it. His eyes moved over the words, lips trembling as he whispered, "Work gives land its worth. If you forget that, you forget yourself. Stand." His voice cracked on the last line. "He never sent this." "No, he didn't think you'd listen." The wind picked up, carrying the smell of wet cedar and rusted memory. Noah's shoulders sagged. "What do you want from me?" An apology. You've already won. Noah's shoulders sagged, carrying the smell of wet cedar and rusted memory. I want you to understand what you almost destroyed. He looked at me then, really looked. And in that silence, I realized he wasn't just my son anymore. He was a mirror, showing me the version of myself I could have become if bitterness had taken over. Behind us, the ranch lights flickered on. Ruth stood on the porch with Lily, both watching quietly. I'd left the system in manual mode now, no tricks. No buttons. It was time for truth, not control. Noah, I said, this land isn't a brand or a backdrop. It's your father's hands, your childhood. Every promise we ever made to each other. And if you can't respect that, then you don't deserve it. He dropped the letter, fists clenched. I don't deserve anything. Apparently. You said it, not me. For a second, I thought he might walk away again, like he had after the funeral. But then his voice broke raw, unguarded. I didn't mean to sell it behind your back. I thought I could fix things, make it easier for you. By erasing me. No, by proving I was worth something. That stopped me cold. His words, pathetic. True hit like a shovel to the chest. You were always worth something, I whispered. You just kept measuring it wrong. He looked down, rain mixing with tears, and I saw the first real crack in his armor. The silence stretched until it hurt. Then, from the porch, Lily's small voice broke through the distance. Dad. He turned, startled. She was holding Daniel's old cap, the one he used to wear, fixing fences. Grandma said you should have this. Noah took it slowly, staring at the worn fabric. The sweat-stained brim. He pressed it to his chest like it might still be warm. I said quietly, your father believed someday you'd understand. I think maybe that day's now. For a long time, he didn't speak. Then he whispered, what happens next? I walked back toward the house, letting him follow or not. That depends, I said. Do you still want to sell it? He shook his head. No, I want to learn it. Then you'd better start early. Fences need mending. When we reached the porch, Ruth handed me a towel. That was the quietest screaming match I've ever seen, she said. Sometimes quiet cuts deeper. Inside, the lights glowed warm again. The smell of rain and coffee blended into something almost peaceful. I sat at the kitchen table while Noah and Lily fed the horses outside. Ruth poured 2 cups and slid one toward me. So, what's next? General. I smiled faintly. I've got a few more cards to play. She grinned. Revenge Part 2. No, I said. Justice. Long-term edition. Later that night, when the ranch had settled into silence again, I walked back to Daniel's workshop. Long-term edition, blinking its small red light.